Hey, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and I'm here with my weekly series of talking to dads and trying to glean information on what dads, especially now younger dads, are up to these days. And I've got an interesting guest because I'm not usually gravitating toward body and health related podcasts, but I've got Cam Hall here today, and he's both a guy who studied how to get yourself in shape and get rid of your dad bod, but he's also really focusing in on the same messages that I've been preaching for years, is being more involved father. So welcome, Cam.
Hi, Paul. It's great to be here. It's a pleasure. And I'm just excited to speak with your audience.
Yeah, so I know, let's just start out with the work you've been
Yeah.
doing. Well, maybe let's take more of the context. You're really an educator. You've been working in
Yes.
education for, you said, 17 years. You're assistant
Yes.
principal of a school. So you
Yep.
come with that background, which is slightly different than a lot of entrepreneurs in this space, especially the body positivity,
Right.
body work area. So
Yeah.
what made you decide to kind of shift gears or change focus or
Well,
add focus?
being a dad was number one. I started in education in the mid 2000s, and as a young guy who there's a backstory to it, but I had a really poor self image, some body dysmorphia, some bad habits in my health and eating, following growing up in an athletic environment where I was always like expected to be a certain fitness level and not really knowing who I was. I struggled with that when I was done my college basketball career. And
Mhm.
I just tried to be the fittest guy possible. And then fast forward about 6 years and I got married, and then we welcomed our first child. And I think during that period of time, I really struggled with balancing what it means to actually be healthy versus looking good, because I think there's a difference. What it actually means to be healthy so that you can be the father that you need to be, the husband that you need to be present. And in that time, it was being a father, a husband, but also being a professional, working with
Mhm.
kids each and every day. And I needed to be present. And what I was doing in my health wasn't allowing me to do that. And so
Oh,
I struggled. I tried everything I could to get to this like external body image thing that I thought was important with neglecting actually how my body was functioning. And so we welcomed our son in 2014, 2 years later, and everything I had tried, all these quick fixes and diets and what have you, really failed me. And I found myself in a really low spot. I almost left my profession. My mental health was poor. My physical health was poor. My relationship with my wife was poor because I wasn't as present as I needed to be. And in 2015, I met someone who took me under his wing and coached me. His name's Mark. And he said, "Man, we got to get you on track." And he showed me a plan, he showed me a system, but he also showed me a lifestyle. And that's what changed my life around. And I was just like, I need to tell other guys about this. And so 2015, I launched Fight the Dad Bod to help other dads live fit, healthy, fulfilled lives with their family. It started with an Instagram account where we shared family adventures, climbing mountains, skiing, and that type of stuff. And then guys were wondering, like, hey, how do I make this happen? And so that's what
well,
Fight the Dad Bod centered on.
and it's interesting that you talk about body self-image and body issues, because you don't think of that as a male issue. And
Mhm.
for those who are listening on podcast rather than on video, Cam is not a guy that you'd see and say, wow, he looks like he lost a lot of weight, or he was once very large and now he's very small. You're a guy who's in great shape, or you look like you're in great shape. You played basketball. You probably didn't put on 200 pounds during that 10-year period,
No,
but
yeah, it wasn't 200 pounds, but for a guy who had a bad relationship with food, I was literally starving myself to get a
yeah.
aesthetic result at that
Oh,
time.
so the flip
And
side, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so when my kids were born, I remember after Maya was born, in that 6 months after, I put on 38 pounds. And for me, with a really negative body image, that doesn't help, right? And so that puts you into a spiral. And then so I did everything I could to lose that weight, like I said. And then I managed to lose it, but everything I was doing was temporary. And when my son came along, I just couldn't balance it all. And I actually gained more weight back in the following year. And it pancaked me emotionally, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. And so, um, I'm so glad I met Mark. I'm so glad I was able to turn that around and had the opportunity since then. 8 years ago, we started to work with so many men in building stronger relationships in their family through a lens of health.
yeah. So you got the website is fightthedadbod.com, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You'll see some resources. There's some free resources there, and then
Yeah.
there's a program that you can sign up. Is there any like one big takeaway? Maybe it's impossible because every person is different in terms of where they enter this. I mean, either you're overweight, you're underweight, you're not eating correctly, you don't have the energy you have. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many different aspects of this, but is there any like nugget that you think of immediately when you think of the people who are attracted to your program?
Yeah, of course. I think you hit it on the head. Not everybody's different. Like a cookie cutter program
Yeah.
doesn't work. We're marketed with this stuff on social media and in the media all the time. Do this, do that. I'm going to go there. I'm going to say you're marketed to do keto and fasting and all these things. And they're just systems to put into your life. But you have to consider your lifestyle before you put any system in. So there's three things I just want to leave with your listeners. Before you start any program or plan, ask yourself three questions. Is what I'm doing based on science? Is this how my body metabolizes food as energy? Because as a dad, I need energy. I need to be rested. I need to be present. And I want to do those things. I want to be able to get on the floor and play with my son at the end of a long day. So is this based on science? Two, can I do this for the rest of my life? And if you say no, then anything you're doing right now and the results that you get are going to be temporary. And the third is probably the most important for us dads. Would I feed my kid this way? Because if you're not going to feed your child the same way that you're eating, you're never going to eat as a family. You'll always be doing something different. It makes it hard to sustain. You want to be eating at the same time, in the same place, and the same foods as your family, because there's something social and spiritual and with connection around food in our families. And so if you can't say yes to those three things, then you need to find something different. And we hope that in Fight the Dad Bod and the Fight the Dad Bod Academy, we offer men and families three yeses to those questions.
Well, I love that last one just because it's such a focus on that social aspect of eating. It's too often, I know people do talk more and more about the family meal and the value of it, but too often we skip that because of their schedules, and when the kids get a little bit older, it turns into their sports schedules and trying to organize that. But some people get around that by having a family breakfast or other opportunities to spend that time together. But it's just really hard to carve out a half an hour with your family. And
Right.
when you think about it, like half an hour, it's hard to carve out a half an hour to the most important people in your life. But I get the fact that when people have different menu choices, and this is hard to avoid once they get to be in middle school and they've been told a lot of things about a lot of different things, it's harder to get them to all get on the same menu. But when you have control over them early on, when you're teaching them good habits, I think that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah, and luckily we started young with our kids. I had gone through that when Maya was 2 years old and Braylon was just born. And so I was learning at a time where they were very impressionable and we learned as a family. And so we eat the same foods at the same time in the same places. And it makes it a lot easier when you get into the routine of meal prep. I think we hear meal prep as spending 3 hours on a Sunday, mapping everything out in little containers, but that's not what we talk about. We like sustainable meal preparation and planning for your family so that you can have intentional conversations around the table. Because there's value in that, not time to connect as family. My daughter's now in middle school, so I see the importance of like settling down and slowing down with all these activities going on and still being present as a family. And over food is a great place to do that.
Yeah. You've got they're 9 and 11 now. So you've seen
9/11.
little bit of the fruit of your labor, that wasn't just a flash in
Yeah.
the pan when they were 4 and 5.
Right. Yeah, it takes work though. I always say, I said, it's simple, but it's not easy. And that's why community and a support group is so important. And to know other people are in it with you is because even though it's simple and it's laid out for you, it's not easy to pull it off all the time. You need people to sound off on and to have ideas with, and people to let you know what your blind spots are so that you're not making decisions because you don't know what you don't know. So I think community and brotherhood is a really important thing for
Yeah.
fathers as well.
Yeah, well, accountability. I mean, that's one of it seems like such a no-brainer, but it's one of the magic ingredients in all coaching. It's just
Yeah.
knowing that you're making a promise to somebody, whether it's somebody in a mastermind or your spouse or a friend or whatever. And if you don't follow through, you don't follow through. It's not the end of the world, but if you continuously don't follow through, your friends are going to be less likely to take your promises
It's true.
with a lot of value.
Yeah, you have to be accountable to someone you deeply do not want to disappoint. And your
Yeah.
spouse isn't good enough because they love you too much. So they'll
Yeah.
support you no matter
Yeah,
what.
or they have
Right?
another agenda. It gets more complicated when you
Yeah.
get your spouse involved in your accountability. So I mean, I'm curious too, because so many guys are, around your age are thinking like
Yeah.
second job, how do I make some more money, either just to
Mm.
improve their lifestyle or because they want to get off the merry-go-round of their
Yeah.
corporate life that's 12 hours a day or whatever. Was that part of your process in creating this, was to
Not at the
transition
time.
out? Or
Yeah, not at the time. I think at that point in time, 2015, I was an assistant principal of an elementary school. I had been in education at that point for 8 years, 7 years, 7.5. And things were going okay. I think with kids, it made things different. I realized that elementary school wasn't where I was called to be. And so I made the shift to a high school that year, the 15-16 school year. I shifted to a high school, and I'm a vice principal of a high school now. And
Mhm.
over that time, well, lots has happened over the last 4 years, especially. And I think the context of that lent itself to maybe, hey, what else is out there? I love my job. I love connecting with kids, but I do feel called to connect with men in a different way. And I think in 2015, Fight the Dad Bod was just me sharing my story, and I was inspired to see that it encouraged others.
Mhm. And you said that in your work, you see what happens when kids are not do not have a father present or don't have
Yeah.
an active father present. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you and I chatted for a second before we started, and
Yeah.
the challenge is always to motivate men to step up and be more present fathers, or to try to develop a plan and thinking around it while being more intentional and all the rest. But it's such a soft benefit that they don't see the fact that if they don't do this, focus on it now, when the kids between the ages of about 2 and 11, they'll see the effects in adolescence.
Yeah, absolutely. I have this unique perspective where I've gotten to see both sides of it. I've seen the dads who come in to our Fight the Dad Bod community because of fitness and nutrition, which is great because
Mhm.
without your health, you don't have anything. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of others. But in our conversations in that Fight the Dad Bod community, things were coming to the surface. Our one-to-one coaching calls, things about being a dad and managing work-life balance and being a husband and relationship building and building really all of that
Yeah.
came up and I could see that guys were struggling. They didn't really have the answers. They didn't know who to ask. And simultaneously, I'm working in an industry in the public sector where I was working in a middle school for 8.5 years, in an elementary, and then I work in a high school. And I get to see on the flip side what it looks like for a youth who doesn't have a dad who's present and active in their life. Most often, unfortunately, some of these kids are on the margins. We would call them at risk, but really they're just looking for connection and belonging. And when you have a youth who's a little bit lost and looking for connection and belonging without some structures in their life and a strong male role model, often that search will lead them astray. And so we try to really we call them wraparound supports for those youth in schools. But I know in my heart, and when I see these kids, I'm like, he just wants his dad to give him a hug. He
Yeah.
just wants his dad to spend 15 minutes with him at the end of the day. Like, this is what kids need. And so I started to see on both sides of this that more was needed from our dads. Men really needed to step up. And I don't want to be judgmental when I say men need to step up, because I think so many guys want to, they just don't have the skills or the knowledge in order to do so. They don't know what steps to take.
Yeah, they don't have the steps taken. And like you, I hesitate to make any judgments about anybody's
Yeah.
lifestyle, because things are complicated out there. There are people who are just
Oh,
just
yeah.
eking out a daily life, and it's hard to do all of it. And I don't want to make them feel guilty for them doing their best. But a lot of us do have flexibility in
Yeah.
our schedules. We can say no at work. We can make trade-offs. New car versus spending 15 more minutes with your family every day. I mean, those are real trade-offs, and
Yeah.
thinking through them, it's not a bad idea in the context of fatherhood. But so this led you, what is the sequence of how that led you to create the Dads Making a Difference mastermind and the
Yeah.
podcast?
I think there's some irony in this story because I was leading a group called Fight the Dad Bod, a health and fitness group. And in January of 2022, actually the 2021, tail end of 2021, I started experiencing some health issues, unexplainable ones. I had a lump in my neck that was unexplained. It was kind of
Mm.
concerning. I had some irregular heartbeat stuff. I was waking up in the middle of the night and cold sweats, feeling like I was going to be ill, but nothing happened. And there was 2 instances where I lost consciousness in the middle of the night. My wife had to call the ambulance. And so this was going on in my life in the background. Nobody had a clue. And I was trying to deal with this, and there was a lot of stress involved in that. And January 20th, 2022, I went to my doctor and I sat down across from him, a young guy. I'm turning 43 really shortly. And so we're about the same age. And my doctor looks at me at that appointment. He's like, "How are you doing?" And at that point in time here in Canada, we're still in masks. And I
Right.
looked at him. I couldn't even talk. I just started to well up in tears. He's like, "You're not doing good, are you?" I just shook my head because there's just so much happening in our life. And he said, "Well, everything that's happening in your body right now is from stress. There's
Mm.
nothing medical about this other than it's stress. And so here's what you're going to do." And he put me out. He put me out on a medical leave from my job. I refused. I said, "No." He said, "You don't have a choice. I'm not giving you the letter. I'm sending it to your employer, and you're
Wow.
going to be out for 3 months. You need to
Wow.
slow down." And my doctor's amazing. He's like, "We're doctors. We prescribe things. Here's my prescription to you. You need to go to bed at the same time every night. You need to wake up the same time every morning. You need to spend at least an hour with your kids, and you need to walk your dog in nature every single day. That's the prescription.
Good advice
And
for everybody.
yeah, right, I know. And
Yeah.
so I did that. And then, in 3 months, a lot came to the surface. I slowed down. I wasn't at work. I shut Fight the Dad Bod down entirely during that,
Wow.
which for a fitness and nutrition coach from January, February, March is probably the
Oh,
worst time to do that. But I did it because I needed to put my family and my health first. And so I did it. And in that 3 months of, I call it silence, where I was just on my own, walking the dog in the middle of the day, feeling lost, feeling guilty for not being at work. All these feelings existed, but I started to slow down a little bit. And what I started to realize was that, man, we've been helping guys for so long, but there's so many other things under the surface. Look what's happened to me. And there's other areas that men need to grow. And so this idea for dads making a difference came to the surface. This idea where we were going to help men with fitness and nutrition, but we are also going to help them build relationships, build leadership capacity in their families, commit to their own personal growth, manage their finances in a more effective and healthy way, because that often leads to stress. And so that's where Dads Making a Difference came from. And then June 1st, 2022, we launched the Dads Making a Difference podcast, and we got a beta group in the DMD mastermind hidden now. But that was the evolution of it, is my own realization of, I can pretend that I have everything figured out on my Instagram profile, but the truth is, in the background, I really need to take care of myself in a lot of different ways, and other men need to do the same.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the fact that you don't come from a position of or you don't start out with I'm perfect and I want to transfer
Oh,
my
far from
perfection
it.
to
I'm a
you.
learner. I'm a lifelong learner. I learned so much from the guys that able to connect with. I learned from you. I learned from the guests that I'm selfishly a guest. I
Yeah,
selfishly host a podcast so
yeah,
that I can learn from my guests. Hey, it's really cool.
yeah. So in the podcast and the mastermind, are you all sharing different stories, or is there a kind of a
Yeah.
curriculum as you go along?
Yeah, so we have a framework that we follow. We have small groups. So we have a cohort of men who connect weekly. We all over North America. So we connect online weekly, and we have 5 areas in which we really dive into. We have goals each year. We do quarterly goals, yearly goals, and a 3-year outlook. And we talk about our personal, professional, financial, spiritual, and physical goals. And relationship and our marriage, of course. So we do those things, and we hold each other accountable to that. And every week we have a man in the middle. And so 2 guys are man in the middle in the hot seat every call. And we're there as a band of brothers, as I really call these fellas my personal board of directors. And because I can go to them, I've known these men now for about a year and a half. I can go to them and really bring up conversations that I might not be able to with other people in my life. And I can trust them, and I know that they're going to give me insight and call me on my blind spots and my BS, and they're going to show me, really through questioning, am I on the right path? And they're going to challenge me to be better. And it's been life changing for the guys in our group. It's been life changing for me. And so we do that every week, and then we meet twice a year in person in beautiful,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, in the Rocky
Yeah.
Mountains, and we
So
do hard things.
how do you get the men to be more open about their feelings? I have mixed thoughts about this because sometimes
Yeah,
people challenge me oh, you don't understand. You're not the younger generation. Everybody is a lot more vulnerable. Yeah, I talk to a lot of guys, and yeah, you'll meet guys like you and plenty of men who
mhm,
are open to that. But in
yeah,
my experience, there are a lot of guys who you get in this group and they're happy to talk finance or talking about sports or whatever. And it
yeah,
takes some something happens, they have a fight with their spouse or they have a health issue or something, and suddenly they need somebody to talk to. And because they have this group that they've been talking about stuff that wasn't at all, personal, they suddenly feel like they can say, last night I had this horrible thing happen. And what do you guys
yeah,
think of this? And
right,
suddenly feelings start coming out, as if that's a
yeah,
bad thing rather
yeah,
than just a human thing. But what is your experience of that? Do you find guys of
yeah.
your generation are open, vulnerable, soft, and
No, not necessarily. I think there's a lot of closed in, a lot of protection, because I think there's this false perception of weakness when when we're open. And I think it's important for men to be open with each other. But I also feel that it's important that we're not always mushy, gushy, feely when we're talking with each other, and that we just are direct.
well, that would
You-
put, that would
Right.
put us off.
Yeah. We're in our group, we're very caring and we're
Right.
emotional, and there's a lot of emotional situations, but that takes a certain level of relationship. It takes a certain level of vulnerability and respect for each other, which is built over time. And when guys are ready, they're ready to open up. I know our new members, when they join us for the first probably month or two, they're feeling out the group, right? They're trying to
Yeah.
see where they are. They're very surface level in what they bring to the group. And then as we start to build relationship, I think my job in there, and I've kind of been the poop disturber for a lot of things in my career and this and coaching, and why I love it so much is because I'm not afraid to ask the hard questions. And I always preface it that I'm here to take care of you and I want to help you, but I'm going to ask you something that's going to make you really uncomfortable right now. Can I ask you? And they always say, "Oh, of course." And then I ask them and they're like, "Oh, wait, I didn't want you to ask me that." And I think that's important. Guys need that. Guys need to know that we're thinking about these hard things. And even though you're not talking about it, I'm going to ask you about it. And you can refuse to answer it or not, but we're on to you.
Yeah.
And we're looking out for you because you can't do this on your own. So it takes some time for guys to open up. And it's not, there are some gushy feely type stuff, man. We know all each other's kids' names. We've gone to each other's family dinners and traveled and meet in person. It's fantastic. But sometimes it takes some hard conversation.
Yeah, that's what it takes. It
Yeah.
takes those kind of conversations that go on for a while until you get to know each other and feel some level of comfort before you can do that. But I really recommend anybody listening to take a look at Cam's program and other programs. There are a lot more of these masterminds and groups of men popping up. And if you can learn this skill at age 30, 40, or younger, it really will help you in good stead, because as you get older, men traditionally, or sadly, find themselves very lonely in their older years because they never develop the skills to create real relationships within their family, even, or with other men. And when things later on in life, when things change and which is already disturbing, but things fall apart in a lot of cases, having those skills and having those relationships really key.
Yeah, absolutely. Relationships are key. Guys, men are literally dying in isolation. And so we don't want guys to be in isolation. And there are multiple groups and programs out there. Find one that fits you. Reach out to Paul. Paul, you have your own group as well. And so, just reach out to men who maybe you see something in them that's a little bit similar to you, but also will challenge you, and just find your person and find your group and your community. There's something out there for you.
Yeah, and especially during the early childhood years, when things are
Oh,
really,
yeah.
you're really a pressure cooker, and you need to have somebody to talk about what's going on in your family, what's going on with your kids, what your frustrations are. I mean, well as I do, it's hard holding it all together. It's hard avoiding saying things you don't want ever to say, and you need somebody to talk to. And guys who are totally closed off are also closed off to the potential repercussions.
Yeah, absolutely. Those formative years of childhood, those formative years of parenthood are probably the most important. I look back, I wish I had something like this when I was first married. I really do.
Yeah, well, that's why I created GreatDad.com, because back then there weren't any resources that told men that they're doing it the right way. Our slogan is, because dads don't always think like moms.
Yeah.
And that's just been central to the support of men, because we do stuff differently. And we need to be told periodically, hey, you're doing it right. You're doing it distinctively. You're not doing it the same way a woman would, but it's all good.
Yeah, it is good. And it's good that you're not doing it that way, because there needs to be a masculine energy in raising kids.
Yeah, I think that is true. The complementarity of the two sexes is really valuable. Even in same-sex couples, they quite often search out masculine or feminine influences in the families. Quite often there's an aunt or an uncle there who's playing a really strong role for that very reason. I mean, I tell people I grew up without a dad present, and luckily I did have strong role models who'd come in periodically. They weren't the constant presence that a dad is, but you need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I like to end the podcast with a couple of questions. One is, what is the biggest thing that you've learned through, parenthood, that you would tell young dads to be aware of or to think of?
Yeah. You might think what's going to happen. You don't know.
Yeah.
And I think this goes right back to when we were preparing to have our first child, and we went to the classes and we did the books and we got the room ready and all of that stuff. And people are giving you all the insight and the encouragement and the advice. And then you get into the moment and nothing goes as planned, and nothing is like the class said, and nothing is like your friend said, and your kids are different and your family's different. Your dynamic and your relationships are all different. And so I think one of the things that I've learned over my journey as a father, mostly through struggles, because that's when we learn the most, is when we're going through those hard periods of time, is that in all of it, I know I have a partner in my wife who I can rely on and I can connect with, and that it comes down to that relationship being key and being the focus. And when that is, I can be a better father to my kids and she can be a better mother. And I think our family is a better unit when we prioritize each other first. And sometimes it's hard to prioritize your spouse over your kids, but I think that is a necessity and will set you up actually to be a better parent in the long term when you prioritize your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then the other question I like is, and you probably, maybe you have something that's related to the fitness program rather than the
Yeah.
parenting program, but
Yeah.
if you had to, if you want to give a challenge to our audience or the coming week, we like to hope these are released weekly.
Yeah.
Sometimes get off schedule, but if you were to give them a challenge, something to do during the next week or something to think of as they're going through either their parenting journey or their fitness journey, what would you suggest as a challenge?
All right, let's talk about fitness for a minute. And I like to talk about nutrition because I think nutrition is your foundation. Exercise and fitness, that will help maximize results during your journey, but nutrition's where it's key. So my challenge to you would be this: go to the same bed at the same time every night,
Yeah.
wake up at the same time every morning, and then eat within 1 hour of waking up, and make sure that breakfast is a balance of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So what does that look like? Looks like 2 eggs and toast. What does it look like for your kids? My kids don't like toast. My kids have cereal. Oh, yes, cereal. They're kids. They're fine. They'll have 2 eggs and cereal. Like, you can eat protein, fat, and carbohydrates every 3 hours, get you set up for your day. Start with breakfast. And then as you progress and you go 5 days where you have breakfast within 1 hour of waking up every day, congratulations. Next step is 3 hours later, you're going to do the same. You're going to fuel your body. And then the next time you do that and do those two things, you're just going to build meals in. So every 3 to 4 hours, you're fueling your body efficiently. And that would be my challenge to you.
Yeah, so it sounds like protein is really the key thing there. That's usually what we're lacking, right? In all the, because I have cereal in the morning with some almond milk, but that's not exactly protein.
Yeah, protein is key, but the key is having proteins, carbohydrates, and fats in a balanced ratio, because together in the right ratios based on your body style and your metabolism, that's going to help you feel your best. That's going to stabilize your blood sugar. It's going to keep those spikes from happening, keep your energy high, help you sleep better, manage stress differently. And it's just going to give you that longevity and that health that you're looking for when you're a busy father.
Right. And is there a resource or some way you could, where people could get a feeling for whether they're
absolutely
doing that ratio correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to fightthedadbod.com, and there's one of those annoying pop-ups. It's going to come up, but it's 7 steps to lose 7 pounds in 7 days. And you might think that sounds like a false premise. But the truth is this: most of us are carrying between 5 to 10 pounds of bloat and inflammation in our body. And it's holding you back from getting the results that you desire and the results that you deserve. So in that guide, I give 7 steps that you can implement right now. And in 7 days, you could be on your way to losing up to 7 pounds of bloat and inflammation. Now, that's not body fat. That's bloat and inflammation that you're carrying right now and you don't even know.
So that's not the same thing as the usual guideline of not more than 2 weeks of, I mean, you're not promising 7 pounds the second week. It's just this bloat and inflammation the first week is.
Yeah, that first week. Here's the thing. In that, I'm going to give you 6 lifestyle steps and functions that you can do to help make this realistic for you, and some key tips I've learned as a busy dad in working with busy dads and how to make this happen. And then the 7th step, as I just outlined exactly what to eat, when to eat it. And you are going to eat more often than you're probably used to right now. And the whole idea is that you're going to cut, clean, and flush. You're going to cut foods that cause bloat and inflammation. You're going to clean by eating the cleanest choices of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates every 3 to 4 hours. And you're going to flush by drinking more water and eliminating things like coffee and soda, those things from your
no,
for 7 days. Hey, I'm a coffee guy too. I drink coffee still with breakfast. But if you were serious about reducing bloat and inflammation so that you feel your best and you can start into some type of program, then get that guide. Follow that guide. You're going to be blown away. 5 to 10 pounds of bloat in 7 to 10 days, and you're going to start feeling way better.
Great. I will take a look at that. Always would be happy to, if not lose the 7 pounds, at least get rid of the bloat and inflammation.
Yeah.
All right, Cam Hall, this has been a great, fun conversation with you. I've really enjoyed the insights and your experience with your kids and how you've taken one program to lead to another. It's a really interesting evolution, because I find I see a lot of guys who are really just focused on the fitness thing and some idea of being some bodybuilder person who doesn't really exist. Yeah. And I think the whole thing is holistic, and I appreciate your approach.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure being here, and I appreciate you and the work that you're doing with your podcast.
So it's fightthedadbod.com, and then Dad's Making a Difference Mastermind.com. Right? Oh, no, DMDmastermind.com. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, fightthedadbod.com, DMDmastermind.com. And you can also, if you're still like, hey, I want to learn more about this guy, you can listen to my podcast, Dad's Making a Difference podcast.
Yes. Okay.
Anywhere.
We'll put all that in the show notes as well.
Very cool.
Okay. Great. Okay. Paul Banis of GreatDad.com. Thank you all for listening again. You can get 50% off my course on gratitude, which is another key ingredient to a successful life and relationships, by entering code podcast at GreatDad.com/gratitude. Okay. So until next time, stay close to your kids. Best advice, and the one I'm always harping on, is just whatever amount of time you can spend close to your kids and your family it's all good. Okay. Till next time. Thanks.